The sinking of the Andrea Doria was one of the most significant naval disasters of modern history, and it changed commercial travel forever. The sinking of the Andrea Doria sent shockwaves through North America and Europe. 50 years after the sinking of the Titanic, no one could imagine this kind of disaster happening again, but it did. The story of the Andrea Doria has taken 50 years to unfold. What really happened that July night? Who was to blame? Was there a cover-up? This is the story of the Andrea Doria and her fate on the summer evening of July 25, 1956. The Andrea Doria was built for luxury, and she was a showcase of Italian style. Many called the Andrea Doria a floating art gallery. She carried over $1 million in original art. The Andrea Doria was a symbol of the Italian maritime renaissance of the 40s and 50s. Out of the ashes of World War II, the Italian merchant marine was rebuilding. The Andrea Doria was built in Sado shipyards in Genoa, Italy. She was launched June 16, 1951. The Andrea Doria was considered to be one of the safest ships of her time. She had double hull construction. 11 watertight compartments could keep the ship afloat, even if 2 were breached. The Andrea Doria had enough lifeboats for the passengers and crew, a lesson learned from the Titanic. There was a radar system that let the Andrea Doria see other ships in poor visibility. Captain Perio Calamai had served as the captain of the Andrea Doria for 51 voyages prior to the crossing in 1956. At the age of 58, he was a seasoned seaman and experienced captain. He received commendations during both World Wars. Captain Calamai was known for his preference for traditional seamanship and his distrust of technology. The Stockholm was about half the weight of the Andrea Doria. She weighed in 12,000 tons. The Stockholm was designed as a cruiser. Her reinforced bow was intended to protect the ship in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. The Stockholm originally carried 395 passengers, but was refitted in 1953 to carry 548 passengers. Less than half the 1,240 passengers that the Andrea Doria could carry. Like the Andrea Doria, she was fitted with the latest safety features, including radar. Captain Norrison was born in Quincy, Massachusetts, of Swedish parents. He had spent over 45 years at sea and was 63 years old. Third mate Johansson Karstens, who was 26 years old. He was considered to be an experienced seaman for his young age. This was his 4th crossing on the Stockholm. He would prove to be a key to the drama that was about to unfold. The Stockholm left Manhattan's 57th Street dock en route to Gothenburg, Sweden, on the morning of July 25th. Captain Norrison chose a course that would take the ship 20 miles north of her usual route. Captain Norrison assigned Karstens the bridge of the ship. His instructions were, stay at least 1 mile away from passing ships, and alert him immediately if they encountered fog. Karstens would later maintain that he saw no fog as he approached the area south of Nantucket. The Andrea Doria reported heavy fog en route to New York. Captain Calamai had reduced his speed from 23 knots to 21.8 knots, in order that the watertight compartments be closed. The radar was switched on, and the ship began to sound the foghorn. At 9:45, the Andrea Doria detects the Stockholm at a distance of 17 miles, and determines the ship will pass on the starboard side. The Stockholm has also detected the Andrea Doria. Karstens determines the Andrea Doria will pass on his port side, as is the navigational norm. In order to increase the distance on the port side, Karstens orders a turn to starboard, but the Stockholm has also misjudged her position and was farther north than she originally thought. Both ships continued to sail at high speeds, and since there was no way to communicate between the ships, they continued to operate using their own assumptions. At 11:09, the Andrea Doria spots the Stockholm at 35 degrees off the starboard bow and at a distance of 1.5 miles. The Andrea Doria turns hard to port to avoid a collision. On the Stockholm, Karstens still believes the Andrea Doria will pass to his port and turns to starboard. At this point, the ship's fates are sealed. In the final move, Karstens gives the order for full reverse, but it is too late. The Stockholm rips into the starboard side of the Andrea Doria, peeling her hull open. The damage is catastrophic. The crash kills 46 people on the Andrea Doria upon impact, mostly from sea deck. Linda Morgan is thrown from her cabin onto the bow of the Stockholm and survives. The flooding causes the ship to list 22 degrees to starboard. The portside lifeboats could prove to be impossible to launch. The lifeboats were designed to be launched with the ship listing up to 15 degrees. Raymond Urso was in cabin class on the port side of the ship. He told me about his experience during the collision.
And I had a guy attached to my neck. He was afraid, screaming. He was going to die. In the meantime, I have to carry him too. I was holding myself through the railing, and plus the weight of that guy. He had the shoes on. I didn't have any, shoes and nothing. He was slippery. He couldn't stay still, so I have to drag him. And then at the end, I says, "I'm sorry, but either you take your shoes off, or I cannot. I gotta." He was not old. He was a few years older than me. Maybe just stay there. I helped some little kids. Those I helped because they were alone. They didn't know where the father was or the mother was.
The Andrea Doria immediately sent out a distress signal that was received by the New York Coast Guard listening station. Captain Kalmai had decided to evacuate the passengers rather than trying a risky maneuver to ground the ship in shallow waters off Nantucket. The Audi France was en route from New York to France and receives word of the collision when she is about 44 miles east of the collision site. The ship turns around to aid in the rescue. The Cape Ann was returning from Germany with a crew of 46. The Cape Ann would be first on the scene. However, she only carried 2 lifeboats. The Stockholm steamed toward New York Harbor for repairs, carrying over 500 passengers and survivors. Later that day, the Audi France reached New York with over 750 survivors. Families reunited and the search for missing passengers begins. After the collision, the world asked, how could this happen? Who was to blame? Immediately, the lawyers and publicists are mobilized. This set off a battle between countries and companies. The Swedes began a public relations campaign while the Italians remained silent. The Swedes played upon the still lingering failing of the war to sway public opinion. Both sides blamed the other. The insurance companies were more interested in limiting their liability. The Stockholm was deemed to be worth about $3 million. The Andrea Doria was valued based upon the worth of her lifeboats and the passenger tickets, a total of only about $400,000. Hearings began on September 19th. Key questions came into play. Had the Stockholm made a sudden turn causing the collision, or had the Andrea Doria cut across her path? Who misread the radar? Did fog contribute to the collision? Were the ships traveling too fast? The legal team offered the Swedes a settlement based upon their belief that blame could not be established. It was rejected. The trial became aggressive, peaking when Carstens took the stand. Carstens maintained that there was no fog, and Kalmai inappropriately turned the port. The ongoing trial became a public relations nightmare, with testimony revealing faults on both sides. Before a verdict could be issued, Lloyd's of London, the insurer of both ships, forced a settlement. Both sides agreed to forego blame and move on. A fund of $6 million was made available to pay passenger claims. Most received very little. Carstens and Nornesen were promoted and assigned to another cruise liner. The Stockholm repaired is still in service today. Captain Kalmai never sailed again. In 1971, an independent review by the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in New York concluded that the Stockholm had created the crash. Their mate Carstens misread his radar, leading to the collision. Within a year, air travel would replace the luxury liner as a preferred mode of transportation. The time of the luxury liner was coming to an end.